We'll look at NC State in a second, but Jeff Howe, Texas. He covers Texas for Horns247 The Horn in Austin on 365 Sports. Obviously, Jeff, there appears to be something different with this Texas football team. Is 1 week too little to actually come to that conclusion?
And the only reason I say that is, this isn't the first time in the last decade plus where we've seen Texas will win or, a close loss or whatever it is, have these moments where you feel like, all right, they look like they've got it together. Maybe now is the moment where they can, take this and roll it into something. Look no further than last year, where they basically outplayed Oklahoma for most of that game in the Cotton Bowl. And even after that game, I mean, you had Sark saying stuff along the lines of, I think there's a good chance we see these guys down the road. Maybe we see them in Arlington. And Texas didn't win another football game until Thanksgiving. So, I think for a lot of Texas fans, I do think there's a lot of optimism, especially with the way the defense played. But I think now that you're almost a week removed from it, it's like, okay, that's great. But if you mess around and were to lose this ball game on Saturday to UTSA, that doesn't mean a whole lot.
How do they feel about Hudson Card this week? Or are they not, for lack of a better term and pun intended, showing their cards?
Yeah, I mean, Sark has played everything pretty close to the vest, Paul. I mean, he's not going to tip his hands whatsoever. I'm much more optimistic today than I was on Monday that Hudson Card will start this ball game. I don't know who's going to start. I think we'll have to wait until pregame warmups. I do know Hudson Card has gotten to work this week on that injured ankle, but also know they've given Charles Wright a lot of reps to try to get him ready in case he needs to start this ball game. So I think if you're Sark, I think you've got a couple of different plans ready. You've got one if Hudson Card starts the ball game. I think another one if you got to turn to Charles Wright. And let's not forget, I mentioned that game Texas won last year, Thanksgiving weekend against Kansas State. That's given Sark really good practice for this week because that was a Friday game against K-State. He woke up that Tuesday not sure if he was going to have a healthy quarterback for that game, and they were prepared to do even more wildcat stuff with Roschon Johnson than they did. I think you'll see some of that in the ball game tomorrow against UTSA. But, with Hudson Card, it's going to be a much different offense, obviously, than it would be if Quinn Ewers is your quarterback. A lot more quick game, a lot more first read stuff, RPO stuff where he can just get the ball out quick, get it to the perimeter, and let his guys work. But, yeah, there's no question, I think, at this point and I think, too, I think everybody understands that in certain situations, Hudson Card is a capable, confident quarterback. But I think, too, I think he gained a little bit of respect. Not to say he didn't have the respect of his teammates prior to last week, but I think from a fan perspective, I think there's a little more respect for Hudson Card, given that the guy went out there and almost won a football game against Alabama, basically playing half of it on one leg. So I think from a fan base perspective, from an outsider's perspective, I think there's a lot more respect for Hudson Card and what he can do just based off what he did, pretty much just playing on guts for half of his outing against Alabama.
Jeff, where does Malik Murphy fit in this situation? Is he still just too young at this point?
No, Craig, it seems like, he just can't catch a break at this point. Suffered a really bad ankle injury at the end of his senior year. Had to have surgery, missed pretty much all the spring ball, and now he's dealing with a wrist injury that just popped up.
Okay.
So, it was highly doubtful before the wrist situation that he was going to be a factor. But yeah, I think at this point, it's pretty safe to say Malik Murphy is not going to be a factor that quarterback mix in 2022.
Okay, so we only got a glimpse compared to what we all wanted to see with Quinn Ewers, but we talked or heard about him so much throughout the offseason. So even with the little bit that we did get to see here these last couple weeks, what were your thoughts on Quinn Ewers?
Two things. One, I felt like Steve Sarkisian's opening script was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't use that term, and I've been critical of some of the things Sark did last year. And even in this game, I mean, he even admitted it this week, there were a few of those red zone calls that he'd like to have back, but I think the way you just showed off Quinn Ewers' arm talent, not just with the shots down the field, but man, go back and watch the 22-yard out he threw to Xavier Worthy on that opening drive. There's just not a lot of guys, period, at any level that can make that throw in a game. I've been saying it, guys. I mean, I think we got a glimpse of it. By the time he's done at Texas, he could be the most talented arm to ever come through that program. I know there have been other quarterbacks and other guys that did it a different way, but just pure arm talent, ability to throw the football. That's what we saw last week. And you look at some of the advanced statistics, and it probably shows you if you play all that out for 4 quarters, maybe we are talking about a different result coming out of that game. But I just think the fact that Sark now has a quarterback that makes you as a defense defend every square inch of the field just with his ability to throw the football. You combine that with just the structure of Sark's offense. When Quinn Ewers gets back, and if he's healthy and goes the rest of the way, that you combine with Worthy and Bijan Robinson and Jordan Whittington, the Texas offense has a ceiling that I don't even know that you could tell where it is.
Yeah,
a lot of that has to do with the arm talent of Quinn Ewers. Yeah,
and Whittington has to stay healthy. He's had issues with that, and he's very, very important to them and a weapon and explosive as well. But the question is there somebody that maybe didn't make anything like a spectacular play or have huge stats, but in your opinion was very much a key part of why they played and were right there until the very end?
There's a few areas, Smoke. I think one, losing Deshaun Jameson in the second quarter. I mean, if you went into that ball game saying, all right, Jameer Johnson and Austin Jordan are going to combine to play over 60 snaps at corner, how would you feel about the game? I felt good about it at all. But those two guys came in and played really well. But the big thing for me was the Texas interior defensive line. I think even you going into last year, I think you look at the pieces they have and say, okay, they should be pretty good. And that group did not play to their paper in any way, shape, or form last year. But the fact that all 6 of those guys that they can roll in there with Sweat, Coburn, Ojimo, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, and Byron Murphy, the fact that you can go legitimately 3 deep and just kind of come at guys in waves, all 6 of those guys flashed. All 6 of those guys made plays. If that Alabama performance for that group is the start of that group getting on a roll and reaching their ceiling, that in and of itself is going to make you a better defense. And then I think everything can kind of trickle down from there. So I thought that interior D-line group, I thought the young corners, Jalen Ford at middle linebacker, I mean, you were able to use the Marvin Overshone on the edge in a lot of ways because of how good Jalen Ford was playing in the middle of the defense. So I think those entities right there. And then again, when you look at the improvement of the Texas defense, you can find it in all those guys I just mentioned.
Jeff, UTSA this week, you mentioned their struggles on defense, but would this be a gut punch if they managed to, again, like throw this thing into double overtime and then the cardiac burns that they have? Like what would be the result of a loss here just because they have to deal with these injuries at quarterback?
Yeah, catastrophic. I mean, like I said, if Texas were to lose this game, it would undo pretty much all the goodwill you built up and all the hope you built up and the optimism you built up. It would pretty much all go away. Now, that said, I think the good thing with this being UTSA, it's opponent number one. I think Texas respects. They respect Jeff Traylor. They respect that program. And then, two, I think having been in a similar situation with a similar caliber opponent, in Louisiana last year in the non-conference, I think it's kind of the same deal. I think Texas understands, look, and at least from the outside, it's an opponent that you're better than them. But if you're not buttoned up and you mess around, you can very easily find yourself in the fourth quarter in a position where you don't want to be, where they're within striking distance. And I think that's one thing that Texas understands. I think they understand, look, you can get up on them early. You can control the game the whole way, but they are not going to go away. That team's going to fight you for 60 minutes. So I think familiarity with the opponent, respect for the opponent, at least going into it, that's my perception of it. I think Texas has all that working for them.
Over 105,000, largest crowd ever. How many do you think they'll get this weekend?
Well, it's a sellout, Smokey, so how many of those show up, we'll see. But the game is sold out, and again, a lot of optimism around this program right here. I know there's been plenty of times in the last 12 years that Texas has been right here, but we'll see if they can build on it and spin it into something positive.
A heck of a performance, just not quite enough. Thanks for your time, Jeff Howe. 247 Sports covers UT and also on the Horn radio station in Austin, Texas. When we come back,